Hi guys, Nick Jennison from Guitar Interactive GI+. It's Monday. We're doing the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out and talk about the guitar. And today, specifically, we are discussing all things acoustic related. Well, maybe not all things, maybe one very specific thing acoustic related, which is the question that we were discussing last week on our stream. It was brought up on stream. These questions sometimes come up and they're great and they kind of inspire me to turn... I guess to create a stream around a question, if that makes sense. And the question was, should beginners practice on acoustic guitar? And we got into the weeds about this a little bit with you guys in the comment section, and it got me thinking. I thought this probably deserves a whole stream all of its own, not just for beginners, but also for players like you guys who are watching this stream, who maybe aren't in the beginner camp. Maybe you're more of an intermediate guitar player, or maybe an advanced guitar player, but perhaps you've been wondering, well, should I practice on the acoustic? You know, what should I be doing with my acoustic guitar? Should I be playing more of it? Should I be worrying about playing it at all? Maybe I'm a metal guitar player. Should I play acoustic? We're going to answer all these questions as we go on today. But before we do, I want to say a quick hello to you guys on the stream. Thank you so much for joining us. We love doing these Monday streams. Always nice to hang out and chat about the guitar, specifically the acoustic guitar. You'll notice that lurking off in the shadows is my trusty Maybach Converb, which is my favorite electric at the moment. It's a wonderful thing. We'll talk about that when we start to compare the pros and cons of playing electrics and acoustics. But hopefully you guys have your acoustics handy, or if you don't worry about it. You can do everything we're going to do today on an electric guitar too. It's more of a philosophical sort of point, if that makes sense. So anyway, if you're a new viewer, thanks for coming on board. It's lovely to have you. If you're one of our returning streamers, thanks for coming back. It's lovely to have you back. We love doing these streams every Monday night. We're going to be here 8 p.m. UK time. We are back on our regular time slot now after some disruption over the festive period. That's ancient history. We're back on our usual Monday time slot, and we will be from here on for the foreseeable, although we have got some very exciting developments that I'll talk to you about maybe in a few weeks' time, because we're not quite ready to reveal that just yet. But we've got some very exciting stuff for the new year going on behind the scenes. Also want to take a quick second and shout out today's sponsor. You will have noticed this logo lurking down here. Seems to coincide with whenever we get the acoustic out. Elixir Strings are kind enough to sponsor our acoustic streams. They make some of the best acoustic strings that I've ever played because they just last for ages and they feel really, really good. And Elixir have been kind enough to jump on today's stream as our sponsor. So if you want to help us keep doing what we're doing here, go to the links down below in the description and click on the links that lead you to Elixir. Maybe go and pick up some strings. If you're playing your acoustic guitar, which I think you probably will be by the end of today's stream, you might want some new strings. And you know, if you want to play your acoustic guitar and have the strings last a very long time, Elixir are probably the place to go. So anyway, let's say a quick hello to all of our streamers in the comment section, then we'll get stuck in with the meat of today's session, because we're going to divide this up into two. We're going to have to basically split this in half. We're going to have to talk about how this pertains to beginner guitar players, because you may have beginner guitar players in your life. You might be the expert guitar player in your social circle, and maybe people are coming to you and saying, hey, look, I want to learn the guitar. That guitar thing that you're doing is really, really cool. I want to learn that. Should I get an acoustic or should I get an electric? You want to be able to give them the right answer. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you are somebody who people come to for guidance because you're a figure of authority, not just in your social circle, but because you're an actual educator. And maybe you want the answer to this question too, because, you know, if you're anything like me, you will have dealt with this question a whole bunch from well-meaning students. And the answer, as we know, is nuanced. So we'll talk about that, but we're also going to talk a bit about whether you, a full-fledged, experienced guitar player, should be playing more acoustic. The answer might not be as cut and dry as you think. But first, some hellos. Let's see who's in the house. Marcin was the first one here. Marcin, lovely to see you. It is, I think Marcin jumped on this about a minute after it went live, which is crazy, but it's lovely to see you holding that delightful PRS. We know Marcin is kind of more in the electric camp, which to be honest, so am I, but you know, doesn't mean that we can't get some cool stuff out of our acoustics. Marcin says, my first guitar was a cheap acoustic with a Gibson headstock called Fiesta. I still have it now, but playing it seems like a challenge. I'm interested to know why it's a challenge, Marcin. So let us know in the comments. And you guys who have acoustic guitars, let us know what your favorite acoustic is, or if perhaps you've had some bad experiences with an acoustic guitar, let us know in the comments too. We want to know what guitar you've been playing. We want to know why it was great, why it wasn't so great. we'll get ourselves a discussion going on here, because that's part of the joy of these streams that we do, is we get to discuss stuff. It's not just me shouting into a camera, because, you know, I would do that, but it's not much fun for anybody else. PJ is here. Hi, Marcine, Nick, and all. I was given my mum's acoustic. The neck was like a boomerang. I couldn't throw it away though. As long as it had a good setup, then anything goes, but they do give you control. Now the setup is something that we're going to talk about, not necessarily how to set your guitar up, but we'll discuss it. You know, we'll chat about how you might do it. Because the setup is very, very important. It's something that's important to both electrics and acoustics, especially for beginners, but we'll chat about that as we go on. Now, I was also given an acoustic guitar as my first instrument, and funny story, I guess, I found it when I was moving house. I found it in the cupboard. This was years ago, like, you know, long time ago. Moving house, found it in the cupboard, and there it was. And like you say, the neck was the aforementioned banana shape. And I kind of thought to myself, I thought, well, this is quite cool. This is the first guitar I ever played. I wonder if it's in tune. So I picked it up, strummed a G, not terribly hard, you know, fretted a G, strummed it, and the bridge came off. Like the whole thing, not just the saddle, but the whole bridge assembly just bong, popped straight off. And I'm like, well, that's the end of that then. But never mind. Chris Brown is in the house, or not in the house, unfortunately. Says, hi guys, I can't be with you tonight. It's frustrating that a lot of very entry-level guitars are not set up correctly, or are not that playable to begin with. It must be very off-putting for beginners. And he also says, I also think that beginners start off an acoustic because it's generally cheaper, no amp, without realizing that thicker strings and bigger body guitars are generally harder to play. Now that is a very good point, and one that we're going to touch on as we go a bit further into this, the access issue, because it is an issue. So we'll talk about that as we go. Very, very good point. Timothy Appling is here. Lovely to have you. Timothy's got some fabulous acoustic guitars that he's inherited, from what I remember. We'll get to that. Larry Warren is in the house. Larry, lovely to see you. Hello, one and all. The first guitar I played was like playing on the telephone pole. It was horrible to play. In that day, you always played acoustic first, then you learn to read music. Now, that's a whole other discussion, is should we learn to read music? I think the answer is yes, because, you know, a strength is never a weakness, but I don't think it's something we should be doing first. I have thoughts on this, but I'll talk to you about it in a bit. Very much not anti-notation. I just don't think it's something that's high on a priority list as beginner guitarists, certainly. Timothy Appling says, my first experience was my dad's Martin when I was 11 years old. He used high gauge strings, and I remember it was hard to play bar chords, or how hard it was to play bar chords. As soon as I got electric, I soon got an electric, and so much easier. Yep, no, I totally agree, especially with the barcode thing. Inherited those Martins last year. I wouldn't take anything for them. I don't think you should. They sound like outrageous, like heirloom pieces. Just wonderful. I'm over the moon for you, but I'm also very, very jealous. Sacred Godslayer is here. Lovely to have you, our Italian Shred correspondent. Who else do we have? Let's just say some more hellos. Keith MOF is here. Says, hi Nick, hi fellow guitarist. I too have owned some pretty dreadful guitarists with very high action, making them unplayable near the 12th fret. Well, there's no money up there, so, you know, who says that? Is that Danish Pete who says that? I can't remember. But whoever it is, they're right. But even still, no, I totally agree. The action thing is something that I'm seeing a lot of in the comments, and we'll get there. Helmut Trap says, hi everyone, my first guitar was a cheap K electric from of all places, Boots the Chemist. My first acoustic 20 years later, the action was too high, put me off acoustic guitars. Well, let me tell you, right, if you had an acoustic guitar that played worse than one of those K catalog guitars, then man, you had a stinker. That's all I'm going to say, because I played a few of those Ks. Yeah, not the greatest, although I think my first guitar that I ever played on was a catalogue guitar, from what I recall. It was a Watkins Rapier, which might not have been a catalogue guitar. I don't think it was at the time, but it was definitely in that vein of British catalogue guitars. For any American friends who are wondering what on earth we're talking about, there was a very strange period in British history where we couldn't get American electric guitars. It was around about the dawn of the electric guitar. We couldn't get them, so this whole industry sprung up in the UK, producing weird and wonderful shaped guitars that were kind of imitations of what was going on in the electric guitar building world. And some of those were the catalogue guitars, because you'd order them from catalogues and from catalogue shops as well. And K was one of them. And some of them are quite valuable now. Some of them are quite sought after. And they're definitely cool and fun, but I wouldn't say they're the best playing guitars in the world. But even still, who else do we have in the house? Let's say some more hellos. So we've said some hello to most people here. Oh, let's say hello to Cranker Tom. Cranker Tom is here. Says, hi Nick, hi everyone. My first guitar was a nylon string acoustic from a neighbour. A smooth way to start. Then I moved on to steel string acoustic before getting an Aria Pro LP copy. Those Arias are just great, right? I remember those Arias from that era. I wasn't around, but I've played a lot of them. Absolutely love them. I have a few Arias in the rack over here. Most notably, you'll see this one. This is let me go to this camera and show you this guy right here. This one that I'm pointing to, this big headstock, that is the Aria Jet B-Tone, which I fell in love with when I did a review of it. It's a 30-inch scale baritone, and it's killer. Steve McD is in the house. Steve, it's lovely to see you. Hi guys, I started out with simple chords on an acoustic, the rest I learned on electric. Now I play both. Well, we can just finish the stream here, because that is the answer. Let's play both. But obviously there's more to it than that. So, who else do we have? Oh, Steve also says, acoustic guitar is loud for an apartment. With electric, you can practice with headphones on. A very, very pertinent point. Some other things. Who else do we have? Cranker Tom says, lovely spread, nice spread triads. Oh, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. A new commenter, I believe, Artemis Clyde, says, I have an Eastman lovely guitar. They make some fantastic instruments, not just the acoustics. They make some really great electrics too. Some more quick hellos. Who else do we have? I think we've got anyone, but don't forget, by the way, if you got any questions for me, drop them down below. We'd like to turn this into a discussion rather than a one-way diatribe. So I want to know what you guys have to say on this subject. And we're going to begin with the discussion of, should beginners play acoustic guitar? Now, there's two ways we can skin this, right? Two ways we can skin this. Oh, by the way, don't forget, if you're enjoying what we're doing here, make sure to give this video a like, share it with your guitar playing friends. We'd like to get this out to as many guitar players as we possibly can. So there's two ways we can think about this. We can think about this as, should beginner guitar players play acoustic guitar first, as in, should they play acoustic guitar at the exclusion of other kinds of guitars? Or we can take the idea of, should beginners play acoustic guitar as well as electric? Now, this poses some questions, because if you're a beginner guitar player, unless you've got lots and lots of money, you're unlikely to run out and buy an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar. So the question is probably going to be, which one should I buy first? Should I buy an acoustic? Should I buy an electric? Well, there are definitely pros and cons to each. And as has been mentioned earlier on by Chris Brown, I believe, our friend Chris Brown, who tags me in fantastic playing on Instagram, and I love to see it. Don't stop doing that. Love it. Yeah, so from our friend Chris, the first thing that is a big pro for acoustic guitar for beginners is the price and the access. So the majority of acoustic guitars, you can get an acoustic guitar or a guitar-shaped object that is a little like a decent working acoustic guitar, or at least looks like one, for very little money. And I say very little money, this is all relative, but very little money in terms of guitars. I've seen some people pick up acoustic guitars for as little as like £20, which is about equivalent to 20 of whatever currency you happen to be watching in, because the exchange rates are mad at the minute. So maybe 20 euros, maybe more like 30 euros, maybe $20-30. You can pick guitars up, certainly in the UK, that are that cheap. I don't hate those guitars. Just going to throw it out there, right? It wouldn't be my recommendation that someone pick one of those up if, you know, they had the funds to pick up another guitar. But if it's between that or no guitar, I'm all for it, right? Go grab it, right? Go grab that guitar. It's not going to be the best instrument you've ever played. Probably going to suck, and you'll probably want to move on as quickly as you can afford to. But ultimately, I feel like any guitar is better than no guitar, and you know, if it's between that or nothing, I'd rather people play the guitar. But we're going to discount those instruments, because ultimately what we might describe them as like they're more like sort of toy guitars or guitar-shaped objects. I've heard people refer to them as derisively. Now, this is not to be too snobby about this because everyone starts somewhere, but you can pick up a very good, very workable acoustic guitar for as little as £100, let's say, which is a lot of money by anybody's standards, but not a lot of money for a guitar. You know, compared to how much you pay for, say, this guitar. This is what we maybe refer to as an upper intermediate guitar, or I guess maybe like a mid-range guitar, let's say. And this is just knocking on the door of £1,000. It's certainly not the most expensive acoustic you can buy. It's not the cheapest either. It's sitting nicely in the mid-range. And for me, I like this guitar. I feel like this guitar is one that I'm not afraid to take out and gig. I'm not afraid to get some knocks and some bashes on it. I'm not a specialist, like a friend Connor Thomas, who's been on a few of these streams already. This is a nice place for me, but you can pick up a guitar for 1/10 of that price. So comparing that to a reasonably priced electric, probably the cheapest that you're going to pick up an electric guitar is going to be maybe £180, give or take. I want you guys to go in the comments, by the way, and search me out some of your favorite guitar deals, right? And tell me what you found. I want to know what we're looking at here, some beginner sort of stuff. I have an idea of a few places I'd go. I'd probably look at Aria as a good starting brand because they make some really good affordable guitars. But even still, you're going to need something to plug it into. You're going to need cables, all that sort of thing. You'll probably need headphones or an amplifier of some stripe. You're probably looking at about £300-ish, give or take, at the bare minimum to start playing electric guitar. Whereas the acoustic guitar, if you've got £95, £100, you can pick up an acoustic guitar, you can make it work. The issue here is, as a lot of people have said, Harley Bentons are great for beginners. Of course, how did I forget? Harley Benton's great choice for beginners. But even still, the issue with this, as a lot of people have pointed out, is that for beginners, the first time you lay your hands on the guitar and the first playing experience you have with the guitar is going to be probably the most challenging because you're not going to have calluses built up in your fingers. You're not going to have the strength in your hands to really put your fingers down in a convincing kind of way. It's going to be a difficult time for you. And if the guitar is too difficult to play, you know, you're not going to have fun with it. I don't have fun with guitars that come in that are very, very hard to play. I do gear reviews, you guys know this, right? So when we get guitars in that are very stiff to play, I really don't like them. This is the only time when my job becomes a chore. And even then, man, first world problems, let me tell you. But if guitars are difficult to play, it's no fun. However, this is not exclusive to acoustic guitars. This is something that seems to be rife among mainly guitars at the entry level, but also guitars all the way across the price spectrum. I've had guitars in the many thousands of pounds that have come in that have played like absolute dogs, and I've had to take screwdrivers to them, which shouldn't happen, I don't think, but neither here nor there. We can opine about that another time. So I guess the deal with this is an acoustic guitar is a great way for a beginner to really get into playing the guitar because it's cheap, it's easily accessible, but it might not play the greatest. But then again, an electric for a similar price also might not play the greatest. Now, let's say for a second that you have £300 to spend on your beginner guitar. First of all, you're very lucky. That's a lot of money to spend on a beginner guitar, so that's great. Maybe you've worked really hard. Who knows? Maybe you've saved and saved and saved. That's killer, right? That's a great amount of money to spend. Really, like, an impressive amount of money to spend on your first guitar. Now, you could spend that on a cheap electric that's going to play like a nightmare and a terrible amp that you're going to not get any money for when you try to sell it because it'll be awful. Or you can spend £300 on a nice acoustic guitar that plays really, really well. Or, more importantly, and I think this is something that beginners maybe don't get, but this is somewhere where you can extol some wisdom on your beginner friends. You can spend maybe £250 on a guitar and £50 on having it set up to play really, really, really well. That makes sense. So that's the access side of things. Let's talk more about the actual playing side of things and what acoustic guitars do for your playing that electric guitars don't do. So the first thing that acoustic guitars require, generally speaking, is they require a little bit more strength in the fingers than an electric guitar does. Now, This poses a question because, as you guys know, I don't believe that the guitar is a strength game. I don't think strength is the answer. Beyond a certain point, you need to have enough strength in your hands to actually fret a note, but that's not a lot, if that makes sense. That's not a lot. So in terms of how much strength you need to press down, it's nowhere near as much as you might think, right? All we need to be able to do is get a fret in contact with, get a string in contact with the fret, and then we're off to the races. Now, acoustic guitars do require a little bit more force to do this, and this might be a good thing. It might be a good thing in the early stages to develop that extra little bit of hand strength. However, that can sometimes come at the cost of developing bad habits in your playing when it comes to playing with tension, let's say. And this is why a good setup is very, very important. So let's explore some ideas very quickly. We're going to go to the two hands cam. We're going to play together. Or we'll go to the close-up cam, rather. We'll do two hands cam in a little bit. So what I want you to do, if you have your acoustic guitar handy, we're going to see what it's like in terms of fretting pressure compared to our electric guitars that we have handy. So I have an electric guitar here, and I'm just going to see what the difference is in terms of fretting pressure. I'm going to play some guesses on this. And what we're going to play is we're going to play a series of tenths, because tenths are nice. We're not beginners here. I'm assuming if you're a beginner, you're probably not watching this, but if you are, hey, it's great to have you on board. But this is a fun thing that you might want to learn. Now, in terms of our tenths, this is a good way of approximating the pressure required at various points on the fretboard. And it's also an excuse for me to teach you some tenths, because tenths are fun. We're going to do the A minor scale harmonized in tenths. It's going to be the following. On our low string, we're going to play 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 12. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12. These are all of our notes without any sharps and flats. F, G, A, B, C, D, E. We're going to turn these into tenths by accompanying them with a note on our G string. So we'll get this. We'll get 1 and 2. So that's 1 on our low E string, 2 on our G string. We would call this a major tenth. You'll notice that this one is kind of offset. So we play a note here, we play our G string note 1 fret further up. So that would be our offset shape. Our major tenth. We'll play another major tenth on our G, on our 3rd fret. So that's 3rd fret E string, 4th fret G string. Very nice sound. We'll then play 5 and 5 for a minor tenth on our 5th fret, minor again on the 7th fret, and then we'll go major on the 8th fret, minor on the 10th fret, minor on the 12th fret, which gives us this. Major, major, minor, minor, major, minor, minor. I want you to observe how little pressure you can get away with while playing this. So what we're looking for here is we're looking to start with, you know, enough pressure to make a note, and then gradually start to back things down until we lose that note. You'll probably be surprised that down here it takes quite a bit, where the strings are quite stiff. But then as we get here, it's a lot more comfortable. As we get here, if your guitar is well set up, it should be quite comfortable. But if your action is way up here, your strings are way high away from the fretboard, this might be a nightmare. We'll talk about how you can get around that in a bit. Up here, on our 7th fret, again it's going to be dependent on our action, but this is going to be starting to get a little harder as we go. That's minor. Now it doesn't matter if you play specifically this, but it sounds pretty, and it's a nice way to kind of test the amount of fretting pressure we need up and down our neck. Now this is something that if you're going shopping for a guitar with a beginner, you might look at, because what we don't want to get in the habit of doing is pressing down like an absolute, like you're on World's Strongest Man on New Year's Day. We don't want to be pressing down so hard that it becomes something that we just do. We develop this vice grip in our playing. Because here's another thing, right? The reason I chose these tenths is it's also going to enable us to do some stuff with our pinky finger. So if we play here, and you press this note, these notes, we should be able to play 2 frets up, which in this case is going to be 3, on our high E string, we should be able to hold this and play on and off with our pinky finger reasonably comfortably. Same goes here for our next major. Same thing goes here for our minor. Same thing for our minor here. We'll ignore the fact that that's a very spicy Dorian sound. We'll get to that. Same thing here. I'm just playing against the open string there. Now, if we're having to fret too hard, the whole hand is going to become tense. It's going to make changing fingers very, very challenging. It's going to make changing chords very challenging. This is one of the reasons why beginners sometimes struggle to change chords on acoustic guitars. It's not because they lack the dexterity to get to and from a chord. It's just because they have to apply so much pressure with the guitar that they're playing that when it's time to actually release that pressure, it takes a second. It's almost like a pressure gauge going up. I want you to experience this yourself, by the way, just so, you know, if you have any beginners in your life, we're going to try changing between two very common chords. We're going to go between G and D. And that's it, G and D. I assume you guys know these. If you're a beginner, then maybe this experiment is not for you, but if you know G and D, you can play along. We're going to start with the following, right? We're going to start by playing G and D with as little pressure in our left hand as we can possibly get away with. Let's just go to these cameras and take a look. So there's our G, there's our D. We're going to see how quickly we can get from one to the other. We should be able to get across pretty quickly. Now the next experiment we're going to do is I want you to squeeze the living daylight out of this chord. I want you just to press it as hard as you possibly can. This is going to simulate the amount of pressure we have to use to play a guitar that is not well set up. So let's press down as hard as we possibly can. Let's see how quickly. Oh man, geez, that is tough. That is hard to do, and I'm tiring out in the process of doing it. And I'm an experienced guitar player. I've been playing for, 20-something years, maybe 26, 27 years, long time. And that's really challenging. And the problem with this is not the lack of dexterity. The problem is that if we apply pressure, that pressure has to come off, and the pressure can't come off instantly. So let's do a quick comparison with my electric guitar. Now my electric guitar is plugged into this amp over here, which I'm going to have to switch to a clean sound very quickly. This is the Victory Super Sheriff, which I've been playing recently. Now, very quickly, just to remind you, we're playing these tenths. I'm just observing how much pressure I have to play on these. I'm going to mute my acoustic guitar. We'll just pop it over here. And I'm going to compare this to my electric guitar. Now, just pop that down there on the floor for a moment. Here's the electric. If you guys have had an electric, if you have an electric handy, you can do this as well. This should be night and day difference, right? Even with a well set up acoustic guitar, the electric is significantly easier to fret, if that makes sense. So this poses a question. It poses the question of, is it better that beginners develop the strength required to fret an acoustic guitar, or is it better that they develop, or is it better that they have an experience that is easier? And I think you can only tell this by asking yourself some honest questions. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. If you're the kind of person that responds to this sort of challenge of, no, I've got to develop this strength, I must level up my hands, then maybe acoustic is a great place to start. However, if you're somebody, or the beginner that you're talking to, or you're encouraging, if they also have, you know, if they're the kind of person that maybe is put off by something being difficult, or maybe they're not very strong, you know, maybe they're a smaller, younger person, then maybe acoustic isn't the way to go. Of course, what you could always do is you could always change the strings. And putting some lighter strings on is going to make a big difference. By the way, if you're in the market for acoustic strings, check out today's sponsor, Elixir Strings, who've been kind enough to bring this stream to you. So, on this on this subject. Here's a great question, great comment that's come in from Odge UK. Says, it seems like a no-brainer that if you start an acoustic, you'll build essential muscles that are transferable, but I play more if I have a sound I love, electric. Now, this is the thing. I actually don't think that you require, I don't think you need to build up these muscles, per se. I think we make a big deal as guitar players of building up strength with difficult instruments like playing bass and playing very hard acoustic guitars that are set up badly. Strength is specific to the task. Now, this is something that we talk about a lot in the strength and conditioning world, and you know, as you guys know, that's another area of interest for me. I'm a competitive powerlifter. I dabble in strength coaching. Dabble is the word. I don't take anybody's money for it because I'm not that good, but I dabble. One thing that we know from sports performance is that putting more resistance onto tasks that are skill specific can actually make that skill worse. So an example of this might be something like if you make a golfer swing a weighted club in an effort to give them a stronger swing. What you end up doing is you end up just messing up the swing. The same is true if you have a boxer practice boxing with weights in their hands or with weighted gloves, or have a sprinter run with ankle weights. These are not things that we see in high-level sports coaching because they actually do more harm than good. And it's actually probably better to develop strength in a more general sense, maybe in the gym, let's say, and to develop skill in a more specific sense. But that's neither here nor there. But I think you're kind of right. There are definitely skills we can pick up on the acoustic, and we're going to touch on this right now. So I'm also going to start this comment, by the way, because it's a very good observation about the sound that you love. That's an important thing. So we'll get to that. Now, what do we get from playing acoustic that we don't get from playing electric? Now, so far it's been a bit doom and gloom. It's been a bit kind of, oh, well, acoustic guitars are hard. Let's not forget, like we talked about in the intro, electric guitars are very hard if they're not set up well. You got badly set up electric, whoa, it's going to be tough, especially if it has high action but not very heavy strings, because yeah, you're not going to require a lot of pressure to fret it, but you'll probably fall off, or you'll bend the string out of tune, because, you know, if you have to press really hard, it's very hard to press with the amount of accuracy it requires to fret in tune. Just a whole issue all of itself. Now, what do we get from playing acoustic that we don't get from electric? Well, first of all, we have this lovely revealing quality to our practice that we get from acoustic. I can always tell when a player has spent a lot of time with an acoustic guitar because they have a certain accuracy in their playing, a certain cleanness in their playing that you don't get if you jump straight to electric, especially with lots of secret sauce on it, let's say. So this is where we start to get into things that are applicable for you, guitar player who's been playing a while, as well as beginner guitar players. So, for example, if I take some licks that maybe I've been working on, if I take something a little bit like this, let's go to these two cameras because they're quite cool. Let's maybe try something that's a little challenging. If I play this, already, that's revealing some deficiencies in this lick that aren't going to pop out in my electric playing. I'll show you the lick and then we'll compare it on the electric and the acoustic. And we'll compare it on the electric with the clean tone as well, because the question might be, well, just play on a clean tone. Well, let me show you what's going on here. So this lick, it's a little challenging, but this lick is one for our more advanced players. This is a 3s and 1s lick, outlining a C major 9. So what we get here is we play the following. We play 3, 5, 7 on our A string, 5 only on our D string. Then 4, 5, 7, and 5 only on our B string. 4, 5, 7 on G, 5 only on B. So once again, 3, 5, 7, 5, 4, 5, 7, 5, 3, 5, 7, up to 8. And we get this. Now, what the acoustic guitar is telling me when I play this is it lets me know, first of all, what it's telling me. What it's showing me is if I play any of these notes a little bit duff, right, if I don't quite catch them, I don't fret them cleanly enough, or I mute them the wrong way with my right hand, or I don't strike them with the pick with just the right touch, I'm going to get this sound. Which is like Guitar Hero. It goes, nope, you're not getting that. So, for example, if I play this on my acoustic, there we go. Already that's starting to sound a little bit better. Now, if I compare this to my electric guitar, even with a clean sound, and I'll turn the delay off because the delay is also capable of hiding a multitude of sins. Here's my electric, beautiful thing as it is. Ooh, already that's hard. Took a second to get used to. Wow, it's tough. Much better. Even not playing that cleanly, it kind of sounded okay. It didn't have that same revealing thing of like, yeah, you messed that up. Do it again. I could tell, you could probably tell too, but in the heat of a gig, would it pass? Maybe. That's better. Now, switching immediately from one to the other is a challenge because this guitar requires a lot less effort to play than this one does. But let's go back here. Let's turn it on first of all so you can hear it. There we go. Nice. So, Keith MOF is saying, surely it depends on the string gauge of each guitar. Certainly does. Absolutely does. But the thing with the acoustic is the acoustic reveals things in a way that the electric maybe doesn't. Other places it reveals stuff. That's some fancy stuff. But it's not just fancy stuff where the acoustic reveals things. If we take some chords, for example, let's take this. Let's take a chord that goes. Those are the ones that I played in the very intro, and I picked those deliberately. Now, what we have here is we have 5 string chords that I'm going to arpeggiate with the goal of making all of these notes as clean as I possibly can. What we're going to get, we're going to play open on the A string, 2 on the D string. Already, did you hear that rattling sound? I'll get back to that. So open on the A string, 2 on the D string, open on the G string, 1 on the B string, open on the high E. So it's D2, B1, everything else is open. Then we shift these 2 fingers up 2 frets. It's very stairway, but I'm not allowed to play that because we'll get copyright strikes. But if I play this on my acoustic, it shows me things about my playing that the electric maybe wouldn't. What it shows me is how clean are all those notes. Are they ringing out with the same volume, with a similar tone? If I play with a slightly flat finger, you'll hear that. Notice those open strings. They're not ringing out anymore. That caught the inside of my second finger. If we can play that cleanly on our acoustic, then we know we're playing it cleanly. Let's switch to my electric and let's show you what's going on. So here we have the following. Same thing, literally the same thing. Let's go to the neck pickup. Let me play with a slightly less accurate touch. I think we got away with it. Now what I'm doing there, you might be able to hear that, but what I'm doing there is I'm deliberately playing in such a way that I mute the G string ever so slightly. It makes a little clunk, but it comes out. How do we get away with that on the electric and we don't get away with it on the acoustic? Well, it's because the electric guitar is, even if we play on a clean sound like this one, this is a really nice clean sound, by the way. Really nice clean sound to play with. It's very open, but it's compressed. Clean sounds are always compressed. Even the cleanest of clean sounds, even your jazz chorus is compressed because we don't like the sound of acoustic guitars, electric guitars in particular, played uncompressed. Now, the acoustic guitar does provide a bit of natural compression from its top, but it's nowhere near as compressed as the sound of even a clean sound. And when we get all these notes hitting a compression like that, it can be quite easy to lose track of maybe one that didn't come out quite as loud as the others. So, playing on our acoustic, big benefit. Now, let's go back to the acoustic. We'll talk about some other things that the acoustic gives us. Now, in addition to, oh yeah, here's a fun one from our friend Frank the Crank NY. Great name. Says every band should be able to play without any electricity. Yep, I agree. Every band should be able to get up there and play without all the assistance. 10 pence if anybody knows what that's from. Without all the assistance. Jonathan Graham knows. So Jonathan, if you're watching, I'll take you outside and show you what it's like. Anyway, so other things the acoustic guitar gives you. It reveals when things aren't quite there. It requires you to play a lot more cleanly, but it also encourages you to have better dynamic control. Also because of this uncompressed thing, because dynamic control is something that we spoke about this when we did a stream with Connor Thomas, who's going to be coming back and doing some stuff with us in the next few months. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Connor's a fabulous talent, lovely lad. Anyway, another story in front of the day. The dynamic thing. Dynamic is our ability to create sounds that are soft and sounds that are loud. So quiet sounds, loud sounds. And to be able to do those on command and not just because it's a habit to do things that way. Now, this also requires us to be able to play, this should be fairly obvious, but it requires us to play evenly at a medium volume. And the acoustic tends to respond best when you play at a medium volume. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's see if we can actually do this. We're going to play some stuff together and we're going to see if we can maintain an even medium volume on our acoustics, and then we'll compare it to the electric. We'll see if the electric's a little bit easier. The answer is yes, it is, but we'll get to that. So, very quickly, let's try playing something that outlines C Lydian, because it sounds nice. Notice how that's getting slightly muted. Thanks Acoustic for letting me know, and thanks for telling the world as well, because we're on live, but never mind. If we play the following, let's try playing 3, 5, and 7 on our A string, and then we'll play 4 and 5 on the D string. We'll play 3, 5, 7, 4, 5, and back. We're going to pick all of the notes. So every note we're going to pick, let's go to these cameras so you can see the pick in hand. Now our goal here is to be able to pick this at various speeds, and I want to know in the comments if you can do this, right? Let me know. To be able to pick at various speeds with an evenness in your dynamic. This is going to be something that the acoustic does very well, because if we play too hard and we start to push the string to create this kind of displaced accent where it gets really, really loud, the string pushes back and it might push our pick out of position, or it might just take a weird, clumsy second to get over the string. You can get away with that on an electric, and you can't get away with it on an acoustic because the strings are heavier. So, other things it might do is it might also let us know if we're playing certain notes in a wimpy fashion. If we're playing, not the UK burger chain, that was terrible, but, you know, I think they have them in America as well. Anyway, we're not here to talk about wimpies. Let's try playing 3, 5, 7, 4, 5, and back down. Our first goal is to play this with an even medium touch. We're going to keep all our notes ringing on. That feels okay. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's quite tough to be very, very aware of our dynamics like that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to see if we can accent certain notes. And we're going to begin by accenting the lowest note, which is here. Let's see if we can accent the second note. Let's do the third note. Can we do the fourth note? And so on and so forth. Now, the acoustic is interesting on this because we have to use a precise touch to get these dynamics on our acoustic guitar. On the electric guitar, we can just hit a bit harder. But as we've discussed, because the strings are heavier on an acoustic guitar, we can't do that anymore. We can't just play harder and expect a note to come out that's louder. It might come out, but it might get that thing that we get sometimes where you try and play a hard note and it just... It's almost like the strings grabbed you and gone, nope, stop that. What's also interesting with this is the acoustic will soon tell you if you're playing too hard as a matter of course. So as electric players, especially if you play with a lot of gain, and especially if you're a metal player, right? If you play a lot of heavy metal, it can be really, really easy to fall into the trap of playing too hard all of the time. And by too hard, I mean picking too hard with the right hand. Your tone gets a little less, it gets a little less nice, you become a little less accurate, it becomes more challenging to play clean things, your notes get all short and choppy, but you can get away with it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I grab my electric, first of all I'll do the accent, well I'll do the accent thing in a second actually. If I grab my electric, if I start just bashing the thing, I'll lay into this real quick. Playing way too hard, the compression just sort of grabs me and goes, no, you're okay, man. If, by contrast, I was to try that on my acoustic, it would just push me around, right? Those strings, they'd be like, beg your pardon. They wouldn't be having any of that. If I play with my measured medium touch, even my clean sound, that medium touch sounds about as good as the heavy touch. Now the heavy thing is cool, and we want to be able to access that rather, because we want to be able to play accents, but it can be very tempting just to play at 127 velocity all the time, because you can get away with it on electric, and you cannot get away with it on one of these for tonal and also physical reasons. Frank the Crank is saying, does hollow body electric unplugged count? That's an interesting question. I think it definitely has some benefits, for sure. But I think there's something about a steel string acoustic guitar that's, I mean, I don't know. If it's fully hollow, if it's a big jazz box, then I guess, sure. But in my experience, they're a little easier to play, a little more, I guess, a bit more forgiving to play than a steel string acoustic. Similarly, by the way, a nylon acoustic, which I have up here, is a very, very nice, very comfy way to dabble in the old acoustic thing, because it's nice and it's easy, but that's not giving us the benefits that we want. We've moved on to what, experienced players should be doing at this point. Now, on to some things the acoustic doesn't tell you. Some things the acoustic doesn't give you, and why you shouldn't be doing all of your practice with acoustic. Firstly, as we've talked about this, here's a great comment from Walter Thomas. We'll just highlight this one real quick. Says, I definitely found I didn't have to be as accurate on the electric as on the acoustic. I get away with a lot more on the electric. The acoustic is less forgiving for sure. It totally is. Apart from in one circumstance, and this seems to be where if there is an Achilles heel for great acoustic players switching to electric, it's this. Firstly, well, it's two things really. Firstly, the acoustic doesn't tell you a lot about handling noise. So when we play with a lot of distortion on our electric guitar, which I will switch to in a minute, the sort of techniques that we can use on our acoustic, we can get away with less stringent muting on the acoustic than we can on our electric, because, you know, there are strings ringing out there that would cause chaos on the electric, and I'll show you in a second. Because those sympathetic strings are not as loud, because I'm not having to put as much energy into them, or not putting much energy into them, and the sound is not as compressed, they don't jump out in the same way that they do on electric, especially with distortion. So what I'm playing here, I'll show you this on the two hands cam, you'll notice that I'm playing with something resembling, it's definitely not a gypsy jazz technique, but it's closer. You notice there's no real contact between the palm of the hand between the palm of the hand and the parts where we traditionally mute a guitar. If I tried to do that on electric with distortion, oh, I just realised, you guys probably couldn't hear that. Let's try that again. Now, there were points there where that G string was ringing out, and I'm playing an E major, and it should have been awful, but it didn't really sound terrible, because it wasn't that prominent, because we don't have that amount of compression on. However, if I go to, on my amp, the big boy gain sound, the big super gain of doom sound, which is probably going to be quite tough, because switching from acoustic to electric, bit of a mish. Let me quickly take a second and do something with this, because I'm hearing a ton of my DI signal. I don't want that, and neither do you. If I try and play without that mute, that's a mess, right? But if I try and play the same thing with a mute, even without being super on it with the muting, it sounds better. It just sounds way more controlled. So the muting is something that the acoustic doesn't give us, that the electric does. There is another thing that's important to be aware of as well. Just turn the electric up a little bit. Another thing that's important to be aware of as well, that the acoustic won't teach us, which is again something that can trip us up if we switch from practicing primarily acoustic to electric, is it won't teach us touch. It won't teach us touch in the sense of creating in the sense of having the right touch for our electric guitar. What I mean by that is I mean playing with sensitivity and dynamics in a way that translate as pleasant sounding electric guitar lines. Notice how I'm manipulating those harmonics, and I'm playing with quite a broad dynamic range. I'm playing some notes very soft in the knowledge that they'll come out quite loud, because they're going to sound different. It won't teach us that touch. It'll teach us a degree of evenness, which is really important. But we need this too. If that's something you want to be able to play, then we need to do it in the electric, because the electric is the only place we can learn that stuff. It's specific. Now, one last point with this. One last point, which is something that Mark McNish has actually hinted at in his great comment up here. Is muting is a skill that I didn't know anything about when switching from acoustic. Crazy how much time I spend on muting technique, for sure. Now, that's not to say that it's not to say if you play an acoustic you're no good at muting full stop and it'll always be a problem for you. It might not be. You might not want to play with the kind of sound that requires extensive muting, but if you want to play with that big rock gain sound, you're gonna have to get pretty good at string muting. To be honest, to be an effective acoustic player, to be really good, you have to be pretty good at that as well, because you don't want extraneous string noise, but it's way less important. It's less of a big deal than it is on the electric. Now, the last thing we'll talk about with this is why you should do both, which is all down to skill development. Now, we've talked about this before. We've talked about this at some length, but the way skill acquisition works, the way we actually learn stuff, and the way we get better at skills and refine them, there is a very strong body of evidence that suggests that one of the most important things for skill acquisition is variation. And variation can come in the form of all manner of things. It can come in the form of changing the tempo of a song, changing the key of a song, playing with different fingers, using a different pick. But one really great way to get very good at the skill of playing the guitar is to switch rapidly between electric and acoustic, like we've done on stream tonight, because there is a momentary learning curve as we go from electric to acoustic. And if you lean into that, if you take that as a learning moment and you go, okay, I'm going to enjoy this switch. It's almost always for me the switch from acoustic to electric. The electric to acoustic is always fine, but switching from acoustic to electric, always an issue because I've got extra pressure that I need to get rid of. But here's the thing. That little moment of uncertainty where your fingers don't know quite what to do is a moment where your brain is having an opportunity to essentially relearn the skills of playing the guitar, the skills of fretting notes and picking notes, and why is the guitar so small now? Why do I have to play differently? Why do I have to play lighter? All this sort of stuff. Those moments, those skill acquisition moments are a huge deal. And they're going to make you a better player. So ultimately, switching between the two, even rapidly, mid-practice session, can be very beneficial for you. So, to sum up, right, our thoughts have been as follows. Beginners should, they could play acoustic. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I don't think it's a necessity. The acoustic is probably going to come a little more difficult to play, but it's also going to be cheaper and more accessible. It's also going to be a little louder, a bit more difficult to play in headphones, as Steve McD rightly pointed out, but it will offer some more strength development in the hands. Not that that's a huge deal, but it's definitely something. By contrast, beginners playing electric will probably have an easier time because it feels easier and may take to the guitar a bit more quickly. I don't think there's a clean answer on this. But I think it's important to do away with the notion that beginners must play acoustic, because that's really not the case. And as someone rightly pointed out a little further up, I'm going to take a quick second and highlight this comment. Here we go. This is from our friend Odge UK. Says, I play more if I have a sound I love. Well, this is the most important thing. The single most important thing when it comes to success at an endeavor, be it practice, be it, we talked a lot about the gym today. It's January. People start going to the gym. Go to the gym or start running or whatever it is that you're doing. Whatever it is you're trying to achieve, whether you're trying to learn the guitar or any other habit we're trying to pick up or skill we're trying to pick up, the most important thing is adherence and consistency. The actual details matter less than just doing it, and you're more likely to do something if you enjoy it. So if you like the sound of acoustic guitar, you like the feel of acoustic guitar, rock on. If you don't, if you think it feels bad, don't like to play it, you prefer the look, feel, sound of electric guitars, that's you. That's it. As beginners. For us, slightly more advanced guitar players, there are huge benefits that come from playing the acoustic guitar, especially if it's set up well, because then it doesn't become this weird strength battle. We shouldn't use it, I don't think, as like a weighted golf club or a weighted tennis racket, because it's just going to mess up your swing. The goal shouldn't be to make it hard for yourself because of the physical nature of the instrument. This should still be something that plays easily. But we should revel in the unique playing challenges that come with even a very well set up acoustic guitar. And we should use that as an opportunity to develop skill. So, no right, no wrong, unfortunately. For beginners, do what you love, right? There are some thoughts early on in this stream that I think might be useful for deciding. But ultimately, what's going to bring you the most joy, do that. For the rest of us, we should definitely be doing both. So, guys, we're going to take a couple of very quick questions because we have run out of time. I always run over on these things. But I'm going to take a couple of quick comments, a couple of quick questions. We've got some very good observations here. I'm going to take a second and highlight this one from my friend George Roberts. Says, I started on an acoustic guitar. It was actually my first guitar. My first song was Ozzy's Diary of a Madman. Randy Rhoads, still a great song to learn from. Man, if you played that on acoustic guitar for your first song, that is very impressive. Very, very impressive. It's a great album. You know, I mean, geez, Randy Rhoads, heavens. Who else do we have? Here's another interesting comment coming in from Facebook. Zach Simpson says, speaking of things in the new year, I'd love to start doing shows, more like panto type shows, but I really struggle with reading the music. Do you know any good places to learn and revise that stuff? Well, that's a really interesting thing. Now, I would probably encourage you, in terms of learning, if it comes to sight reading, the issue with this is sight reading has to be fresh information. Otherwise, you're not really sight reading it. It's a bit like, you know, how can I put it? It's a bit like improv comedy. Like, improv comedy is not really improv comedy if you're doing a routine you've done before, even if you haven't done it in a while. I think it'd be important to yeah, I don't know of any great resources. What's traditionally recommended is to find some cello music. The reason for this is cello tends to be in quite a similar register to the guitar. We can take some fairly basic cello music. It tends to be more specific to contemporary guitar playing than a lot of the classical guitar repertoire, which is very specific to classical guitar. It's very idiomatic, whereas cello, single notes, double stops, that's probably a good place to begin, I would say. But ultimately, with reading music, it's just a case of, like anything else, a case of doing it. Now, I will say with this, I got my reading really shit hot when I was in college because it was the thing to do. I have done I've done one reading gig in my whole life. One reading gig. And it wasn't a dots reading gig apart from a few little bits. It was just some, you know, just some charts, chord charts for the most part. But I'm with you, I hear you. What I will say is, on the subject of reading notation, notation is an interesting beast because standard notation is actually tab for piano keyboards. They are two hands, left and right. They overlap at middle C. They are color-coded to the white notes and black notes of the piano. It's a form of tablature for pianos. So if piano players ever give you a hard time for not reading, ask them why they can't read guitar tab. Because we're reading the tab for an instrument we don't play. However, just because it's unfair and it's not designed for us doesn't mean we don't have to do it, because it's just the way it goes. You know, it's unfair in the same way that we have German friends and French friends and, you know, Italian friends who have come here and are engaging in this stream in English, right? They're speaking in English because it's common language. Piano notation, standard notation, is a common language for musicians, so we got to do it. But we can acknowledge the fact that we're not bad people and we're not thick or stupid or whatever because we can't grasp it as quickly as some other instruments. It is something that is very poorly suited to the layout of the guitar, unfortunately. We just have to grapple with it. So a final thought on that, on notation, is you will never be able to read something that you can't play, you couldn't play on command. So if I said to you, for example, play me the C major scale, ascending in threes, if you can't go, oh yeah, I know what that is, and play this. Are we on? Is this thing on? If you can't play that on recall, you'll never be able to look at a score and recognize, yeah, that's it. That's what that is, because that's how we read. We don't read a note at a time. We read in the same way we don't read words a letter at a time. We read words as chunks of information. We see notes on a score as chunks of information. We need to identify patterns and sequences and intervals readily and rhythms. If you can't play that stuff, if somebody asked you to do it by describing it, means that you probably not going to be able to read it very effectively. So having that stuff under your fingers is going to be important too. Zach, I'm sorry I've just turned this into a shopping list of things you've got to practice, but cello music, good place to begin. Anyway, got a couple of other great comments coming in about notation. Maybe we'll talk about that another time. A new friend, Mechanobi, says, wouldn't it be better to just learn notation over tabs? Tabs are really not interchangeable. They're not interchangeable between other musicians, but a notation is, sure. But we also live in an age where notation is becoming less and less used. I think it's an important skill. I also don't think reading tab is something that is bad, but I don't think it's something that should be a huge focus. I think it's way more important to be able to identify things by ear, to be able to grapple with concepts on the guitar, to be able to think of a sound and produce it and give it names and all that sort of thing. Now, it's an interesting one because, yeah, there's definitely value to learning notation, I agree, but I don't think it should be an either-or thing. And I think tab can communicate information that notation can't. Because the guitar is such an idiomatic instrument, there are things that notation can't effectively communicate that tab can. For example, position. So, you know, how do we know if we're playing this, or we're playing this, or we're playing this? Same notes, 3 positions. How do we communicate that? Well, you have to just kind of read ahead and guess. But these have different sounds. And tab can communicate that. Additionally, there are extended techniques that tab can communicate that notation can't communicate. But also, notation allows us to talk to other musicians. So it's important to do both. Or neither. Do whatever you like. But no, it's a great question, man. I'm being a bit facetious, but it is a very good question. I agree. So this is not me dunking on notation. Again, I spent a long time getting my reading really good, and then I've only used it once, which was kind of annoying. But never mind, that's one of those. Aaron Silverman says, I took a piano class around age 5. My ability to read music has always stuck, even when I'm away from any instrument for months. If you have kids, start them early. For sure. It's a bit like learning a language, you know? If you want your kids to learn a language, if you want them to be able to be polyglots, say you want them to speak English and Spanish, let's say, start them early, you know, because that sort of stuff sticks. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you for coming on this little journey of discovery with me. Next week, we're continuing our discussion on acoustic stuff, but we're not going to be talking about this topic. We'll have a new topic for you next week. Thanks for having me. My name's Nick Jennison from Guitar Interactive Magazine and GI Plus. Click the links down below. Don't forget to go and check out our sponsor, Elixir Strings, who've been kind enough to bring this stream to you guys this evening, and also to bring the strings that I've had on this guitar for months, and they're still shiny and new and sound great, which is, if that's not a reason to buy Elixir Strings, I don't know what is. Anyway, listen. Thanks for having me. My name's Nick Jennison from Guitar Interactive. I will see you guys next time. We're here every Monday, 8 p.m. UK time. You know where to find us. You know what to bring with you. It's a guitar. I'm going to play some more. I'll play my acoustic, and I'll see you guys next week. My name's Nick Jennison, and it's a pleasure to introduce to you GI Plus, the brand new lesson platform brought to you by Guitar Interactive. We've assembled a team of the best players and educators in the world to bring you exclusive lessons covering everything from metal to blues to fusion and everything in between. Want to level up your shred chops? Check out How to Play Fast by Andy James. Or how about sweep picking with Rick Graham? Or maybe country's more your bag? Well, how about a full-length exclusive country guitar course from Andy Wood? Interested in learning how to play over changes? Well, members get access to hours of exclusive lessons from Fusion Maestro Tom Quayle. Or maybe you want your playing to sound more soulful. Well, who better than Chris Buck to show you how it's done? Or perhaps you want to learn the secrets of the masters. Well, members get access to over 60 feature-length tech sessions where our tutors painstakingly decode the styles of players like David Gilmour, Eddie Van Halen, John Petrucci, Larry Carlton, Slash, Tosin Abasi, Paul Gilbert, and many more. You get all this along with exclusive live webinars, free backing tracks, competitions, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for GI Plus today.